Supposedly, the older we become, the more wisdom we get. But that's in the real world. How about the world of football? Do the teams that have more experience on the field really have a better chance at winning a premiership? The running joke with Geelong in 2022 was that it was in a historically older list full of seasoned players and veterans. Well, the joke was on the competition as they steamrolled to a grand final, winning it easily, and made everyone who doubted them look like fools by dressing up as old men and rubbing it in their faces. It carried on Geelong's tradition of having the best Mad Monday costumes, but does bring up an interesting topic about list experience and winning. This is a little complex to judge, so to make it clear, let's put the last 10 premiers into 3 categories for their average age of players that played on game day. An important note is that this isn't the entire list's average age, just the 22 or 23 who actually play. Category 1 means their weekly lineup was between 1st and 6th oldest that season. Category 2 is 7th to 12th oldest, and Category 3 is 13th to 18th oldest. Overall, the split does point towards having an advantage with an older list over a younger one. The last 2 premiers in Collingwood and Geelong were ranked 2nd and 1st respectively for average age. Richmond have a relatively young team for their 3 premiership wins, with 2020 the only year they ranked in the top 6, while Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs' success were built with sides ranking in the bottom 3rd. 2013 isn't included in the last 10 flags, but all of Hawthorn's 3-peat teams were at least top 4 in age. There is correlation here, with 6 of the last 10 premiers in the oldest third of the competition when they won the premiership. In totality, the average age for the last 10 grand final winners is 25.88, so we'll round it up to roughly 26 years old, but let's come back to this later. The other way to measure how senior a team is through the average games played. Once again, this is just for the players on the field and not the club's entire list. We can use the same 3 categories as before to divide up the 10 premiership winners and see where they all fit in terms of playing experience. It may come to no surprise, but the results are nearly the exact same, with Melbourne in 2021 now in Category 2. 60% of the teams fit into the top 6 for average games played in that particular season. In fact, all of the sides had over 90 games experience, with the Bulldogs in 2016 the big outlier, down at just 76.8 games per player. So if we total all this up, the average games for each player in the last 10 premiership teams equals 110.4, so we can roughly round down to 110. Obviously no games have been played yet, and many sides still have 5 to 6 positions up for grabs, so trying to guess ages and games of the 23 for next season is near impossible. However, a month or so in, comparing the average age of 26 and games played of 110 of previous premiers could give an early indication who is in the right bracket to challenge if we look at history. But let's say that overall team age and playing experience doesn't really matter. It's not like 80 or 90% of the premiership winners are the oldest playing list. But the last couple of grand finals have shown veterans taking over the game. A great example was Scott Pendlebury only a few months ago. He was pretty quiet throughout the first half, but he did step up when required. The Pies were 1 point down, and a quick kick from Bobby Hill lined up Pendlebury just before the 3/4 time break. There was never any doubt as soon as he started the run-up, kicking it straight through the middle. That was just the start. The 35-year-old, with over 380 games of experience, put it all on display. When everyone else seemed to be in a rush or panicking, look at Pendlebury's ability to stay calm and think through the situation in front of him. He explained his thinking after Charlie Cameron put the Lions back in front with a little over 5 minutes left.
Walking back, first thing, head check the bench, no signs up for either side, so I know there's 5+ minutes to go.
Yep.
So I just grabbed Geordie, Nick, Coxie. He's like, there's no panic here, no rush. Like, we don't need any hero plays in terms of, like, if we got a mark on the back flank, it's not just an automatic blind rip back in the middle. Like, we've got enough time to find a way to get a goal.
Orchestrated.
And then Nick turns around to me and goes, "Oh, do you want me to go half forward? Do you want me to get Mitch in? What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Are you serious? You don't want to be a part of this?"
Yeah.
It's up to you. Do you want to be in or not? He goes, No, I'm in. Then we just set up a play, not like a little bit of a play that we wanted to try and run, no different to every other centre bounce. And then Nick was able to get first touch over to me, got it forward, then his handball to Geordie. Geordie finishes, come back in. I was like, well, hey boys, that will do. Like, that will do.
It shows how important a veteran presence is and their calming influence over others. Hugh McCluggage is a great player, but Pendlebury put him in a full spin cycle, making him slip and slide in one of the highlights of the game. He was the MVP of the last quarter. A similar instance of experience taking over was in 2022's grand final. Geelong were by far the oldest and most experienced team, coming up against the Swans, who were ranked just 12th for average age, boosted heavily by Lance Franklin as well. If we look at the Norm Smith medal voting in the game, the top two were Isaac Smith and Patrick Dangerfield. Unlike Pendlebury, both did their damage early to set up the victory. Matched up with second-year Swan Errol Goulden, the smarts and positioning of Smith set up 2 early goals for himself. When you have played 250 odd games on a wing, you know what to do and where to be. He kicked the third goal, waiting perfectly at the back of a stoppage, and really dominated the outside. 771 metres gained from 23 kicks shows he was always moving the ball forward, and his 14 score involvements were a game high. Perhaps Errol Goulden, who was matched up on him throughout the day, learned a thing or two and has helped propel himself to become an elite wingman. At 33, Smith's Norm Smith medal made him the oldest to win the honour. The complement to Smith's outside run and carry was the then 32-year-old Dangerfield's grunt work. It didn't matter if it was Luke Parker, Chad Warner or any other Swans on baller that matched up with him. Dangerfield beasted them. 27 disposals, of which 19 were contested, impacted the early parts of the game massively. Those centre clearances throughout the first half kept the ball moving forward, and his presence overwhelmed Sydney's midfielders. 10 Norm Smith medal votes were well deserved. He spoke later on about how his previous grand final and finals losses eased the pressure on him mentally.
Fear losing going into it. At very worst, the worst thing that could happen is that you'd lose a game. Been there and done that, plenty of times before, and the world didn't capitulate. And that's Chris, to be honest. That's Chris talking about it is not the end of the world if we lose this game, but what if we grasp it?
The AFL did release the rankings for each club's entire list in terms of age and games played. This includes around 40 players, so it isn't that accurate in basing the experience week to week as the previous numbers did. But with this, here are a couple important notes when the season starts. North Melbourne are by far the least experienced team, with an average number of games at just 49.2, 7.4 below the second lowest, which is Fremantle. They are a big outlier. Essendon also sits in an awkward spot. They are just the 12th youngest list, but are inside the top 8 for games played, pointing to their list not having much middle ground. Their top end have played a lot of football, but a good amount of youth haven't played much at all. And the reigning premiers Collingwood do come in 2024 leading both lists. It makes sense with guys like Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Mitchell and Howe all playing a significant amount of football. The other 15 clubs seem to match up well in the categories, and around 10 of the clubs' average age don't deviate a whole lot. It's an even competition, and it will be fascinating to see later down the road if experience can take over like it has done in the previous 2 grand finals.